One of the most well-known deans of a top law school in the United States of America, UC Berkeley School of Law. The dean's name is Dean Erwin Chemerinsky, is calling out law firms who have capitulated to the Trump administration. He's addressing this issue also very candidly with students at the law school where he is the dean. He's come out with a number of op-eds, and like this one in the Daily Journal, "We should be ashamed." This one in the New York Times, "We should all be very, very afraid." Above the laws written about what Dean Chemerinsky is doing, saying T14, that means top 14, law school dean thinks law school applications are soaring thanks to Donald Trump, and T14 law school dean encourages students to take into account whether big law firms capitulated when making career decisions. Now, Dean Chemerinsky does not mince words. Here's what he said in one of these op-eds. "As lawyers, we should be ashamed that so many in our profession have capitulated to authoritarianism, choosing silence and self-preservation over defending the Constitution and the rule of law." He goes on to say, "It's not hyperbole to say that if there is a path towards authoritarianism in the United States, this is it." And this was written with less than 100 days. In less than 100 days, Donald Trump has taken an astounding array of actions to consolidate power and stifle dissent. He's claimed authority to deport and imprison those lawfully in the United States in the maximum security prison in El Salvador. He has claimed the ability to eliminate federal agencies created by statute and to refuse to spend federal funds allocated by law. I'll just say this as a lawyer now for about 15 years. When I attended Georgetown Law, every law student knows Professor Chemerinsky, Dean Chemerinsky. He's argued multiple cases before the United States Supreme Court. It's not hyperbole for me, although Dean Chemerinsky is humble, for me to say he's probably the most famous law professor out there right now. And again, the high-profile dean of UC Berkeley School of Law speaking out. We need more people like this in the legal profession. Let's bring in Dean Erwin Chemerinsky right now. Dean Chemerinsky, great to have you on the MeidasTouch Network. I want to talk about, first your statements about these law firms capitulating. What are you saying to students? Tell us, because your platform as the dean of a high-profile top school like Berkeley, some people would be scared.
First, thank you for all the kind things you said, and it's a pleasure to be talking with you. I think it's important to note that what Donald Trump has done in a series of executive orders targeting law firms is clearly unconstitutional and illegal. He's open that he's doing this for retribution. He went after the law firm of Perkins Coie because at one point it represented Hillary Clinton. He went after the law firm of Paul Weiss because at one point they employed a lawyer who had worked for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office that prosecuted Trump, and because they'd represented some plaintiffs suing the January 6th insurrectionists. Each one of the executive orders states that it's for retribution. 4 law firms so far have brought challenges to what Trump has done. All 4 have won in federal district courts. All of the district courts, and 2 were conservative judges and 2 were liberal judges, said that what Trump was doing violates the First Amendment, it violates due process, it undermines the Sixth Amendment right to counsel. So one of the things that I've said to my students is you quoted, that when they choose what law firms to interview with and go to work for, they should look to, was it a law firm that fought back or a law firm that unfortunately capitulated?
Some of these firms that are capitulating were so revered. I mean, when, whether it was you starting UC Irvine School of Law as their first dean, now in your position at Berkeley, when I went to Georgetown Law, I mean, they would recruit, they talk about pro bono services, they talk about diversity and inclusion, and, they'd really pitch that. And so, I'm not sure if people outside of the legal community fully grasp almost what a betrayal. These firms have been around for such a long time to go this route. I mean, did you see it coming? And how do you interact with these firms on a day-to-day basis, knowing that betrayal?
What's so important to emphasize is how clearly illegal and unconstitutional the Trump executive orders have been with regard to law firms. They're punishing law firms for their advocacy that's protected by the First Amendment. They're imposing sanctions that literally could put the law firms out of business without due process. They're undermining the right to counsel. If all of the law firms had fought back in the way that Perkins Coie, Jenner and Block, Wilmer Hale have fought back, this would have ended. But because the law firms capitulated, it's continued what President Trump has done. We all learned on the playground, if you give in to a bully, you only make it worse.
Let's talk about Trump's other attacks on the rule of law. The fact that, I have to get from your perspective, like when you see these debates on corporate news about due process and whether due process should or shouldn't be given, and that there's a split screen and there's a side of people who are arguing no due process in the United States of America. Outwardly, that's the argument. No due process to people. You disappear them. You send them to CCOT in El Salvador. Or now, what they were recently talking about, Libya. Where else? What do you think about? Let's talk just your overall reaction to that taking place in these United States.
The Fifth Amendment says no person should be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. It doesn't say no citizen. It doesn't say no documented person. It's no person can deprive of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. We've got to remember one of the reasons we have due process is to make sure the government's not making a mistake. The government may believe that somebody's part of a Venezuelan gang or somebody is dangerous, but we need to have process to make sure that they really are part of the Venezuelan gang or they really are dangerous. And so maybe there's two people on a split screen, but that doesn't mean there's two arguments of equal weight. The Constitution has always been thought to provide due process to everyone here, citizen and non-citizen, documented and undocumented.
Dean Chemerinsky, what do you make of the resiliency of the federal court system right now? I mean, we're seeing, a Trump-appointed judge in the Southern District of Texas, Judge Rodriguez. You're seeing a Trump-appointed judge in Louisiana, Judge Doughty. You're seeing a Trump-appointed judge in Maryland. And the language, at least on these due process cases, seems very similar to your Obama-appointed judge or your Biden-appointed judge or your Clinton-appointed judge. It's not to mention, your Reagan-appointed judges like Lamberth and, and others who have ruled against him. I mean, sometimes, as a former practicing lawyer, it makes me uncomfortable even to have to say a Trump-appointed judge did this and a this-appointed judge. It's not how I used to talk about these things. But what do you make of just the resiliency of the federal court? Are there things that concern you? Are you surprised? Do you think it's holding up? What's your overall thoughts there?
Ultimately, if our democracy is going to survive, it's going to be because of the courts. They're right now the primary guardrail of democracy. President Trump doesn't have people around him who are willing to say no. The Republican Congress so far hasn't only say no, but the courts have been. And I think the fact that you have both liberal and conservative judges, Democratic appointees and Republican appointees repeatedly saying no to Donald Trump should tell us something. It should tell us that what he's doing isn't a close question under the law. He's blatantly violating core constitutional principles.
Now, Dean Chemerinsky, you've argued multiple cases before the Supreme Court. You're humble, so I'll just say it. You're also just a savant on Supreme Court history. Like, for those who know, like one of the things that like Dean Chemerinsky will do at his speaking engagements, he could pretty much cite for you like footnote 23 in a 1963 obscure case that nobody's heard of. So you know the court very, very well. You know all the justices, and you've studied this. You've studied the court, its dynamics better than about anybody. So talk to us now about the dynamic that exists on the court with the types of cases you're going to start to see next week. Nationwide injunctions as kind of the precursor to the birthright citizenship issue. But I think the threshold question is, are nationwide injunctions allowed or not allowed? Talked about that one, but more broadly, what dynamic you see based on the composition of the justices, the groups that are being formed that you see as other cases make their way to the Supreme Court? What are you looking at?
Sure. It's a court that has 6 conservative justices appointed by Republican presidents: Roberts, Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, and 3 liberal justices appointed by Democratic presidents: Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson. I think the Supreme Court's going to have a mixed record in the end in terms of whether or not they uphold what Trump's done or whether they strike it down. They have a mixed record already. So far, what they've said is that the Trump administration can't put people in El Salvador. Just a couple of weeks ago, the Supreme Court entered an order, and it was 7-2, only Alito and Thomas dissenting, saying no further individuals can be placed in the El Salvador maximum security prison without prior approval from the Supreme Court. On the other hand, with regard to the cutoff of funds, there have been 2 Supreme Court rulings. One allowed Trump to cut off the funds that were appropriated by statute. One invalidated it. Both were 5-4, with only Justice Barrett in the majority in both, and she didn't write. I think there are instances where the Trump administration is going to lose. I think they'll lose ultimately on birthright citizenship. I think there's instances where the Trump administration may win. I think the court's going to give the president a lot of latitude to fire people in the executive branch. I don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do in the case that's going to be argued next Thursday. It's Trump versus Casa, Trump versus Washington, and Trump versus New Jersey. And as you point out, the issue is, can a federal district court issue an injunction for the entire country? It's always been understood that it can happen. The alternative seems draconian. It would require somebody to file lawsuits in all 94 federal districts. It could lead to absurd results. Somebody born in one federal district be a citizen, someone born under identical circumstances in another district wouldn't be a citizen. But I don't know what the court's going to do on that issue.
Where do you see for everybody who knows, like for me, this is like me geeking out at my finest right now. I get to ask Dean Chemerinsky all of these incredible questions. So I'm having, and I hope our viewers are having fun too. Tell us about what do you think is going to happen with Abrego Garcia? You had the most recent development is that after being ordered into expedited discovery, the Trump regime has invoked the state secrets doctrine. Judge Zinnes in Maryland has said, describe this. What's the state secrets issue right there? So you have that with Abrego. Maybe if you can talk to that. But then we have other cases like that are not getting the same amount of attention. Another case with the Trump appointed judge in Maryland where the district court judge said facilitate the return there. And we've had 3 or 4 courts right now: New York, Southern District of Texas, Colorado, and I think one other saying the Alien Enemies Act is invalidated. But we have hundreds of people at CCOT, this camp in El Salvador, this terrorism, whatever you want to call it, in El Salvador. Tell us what you think is happening in these cases.
There's so many layers to it. And on every level, what the Trump administration has done is illegal and unconstitutional. First, the Trump administration has invoked, as you point out, the Alien Enemy Act of 1798 as a basis for taking people and putting in El Salvador. The Alien Enemy Act applies if there is, quote, a declared war or an imminent military invasion, and it allows for people in a hostile enemy to return to their home country. The Alien Enemy Act has only been used during the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. And that's why Judge Rodriguez in Texas said it has no application here. Several judges said that. Second, even if the Alien Enemy Act applies, there still has to be due process before somebody is deported, before somebody's imprisoned. The individuals who have been put in a maximum security prison in El Salvador have been given no due process at all. That's why, third, every court has ruled against the Trump administration on this. In the Abrego Garcia case, a lawyer for the Justice Department told the judge that he was taken there by mistake. Maybe it was mistake. Maybe as now the Trump administration claims it wasn't mistake. But that's what due process is all about. And so I think the judges are going to order that the people be brought back from El Salvador. And I think the Supreme Court's going to agree. The government has to facilitate that. But then what's going to happen? Will the Trump administration comply, or will they defy the courts? That's what we have to wait and see.
Final topic: law school applications on the rise. You say because of the policies of Trump. Can you talk to that? I know Lots of law students in where I teach also say, when there's recessionary environments, that's one of the reasons that people start applying to law schools, because they're worried about the job market. Is that what you meant by that, or are there other reasons as well?
I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen law school applications go up and law school applications go down, and we're always speculating as to why it happens. I think in this instance, some of it at least is Donald Trump's election as president. I'm seeing more people applying and wanting to come to law school to fight for democracy. When I talk to our admitted students and I'm asking them, why law school? That's what I'm hearing. Some of it, I think, is the economy. There's fear of a recession, and going to law school seems a good thing to do in a hard job market. So hard to know exactly why, but no doubt law school applications went up this year.
Dean Erwin Chemerinsky, Dean of UC Berkeley School of Law. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.